Every act of creation is first an act of destruction, Picasso once said, and tonight, we begin our whispered journey with this powerful thought. Welcome to Whispered Tales. Close your eyes, let your body relax, and let the words wash over you as we step into the life of one of the most revolutionary artists in history. Picasso understood that to create something truly new, one must first break the rules, tear down the boundaries, and let go of the familiar. His art was not just a reflection of the world, but a bold reimagining of it, each stroke of his brush, a challenge to the old ways of seeing. Tonight, as we explore his life, you'll discover how Picasso shattered the conventions of art, transforming the way we view the world forever. Through this tale, let your mind drift, feeling the energy of Picasso's rebellious spirit. From the calm blues of his early years to the explosive colors of Cubism and the haunting cries of Guernica, Picasso's creations were alive, bursting with emotion and meaning. But it wasn't just his art that was groundbreaking. His entire life was a testament to the power of imagination and the courage to dream differently. So take a deep breath, settle into the quiet, and let's journey through the heart of Picasso's art. His story whispers to us even now, reminding us that in order to create something extraordinary, we must first dare to destroy the ordinary. Relax, listen, and allow yourself to be inspired. Welcome to the world of Pablo Picasso. Imagine, if you will, a gentle breeze flowing through the winding streets of Malaga, Spain, on a crisp October morning in 1881. The sea, not far from the little town, gently whispers its eternal song, as if sensing that something remarkable is about to occur. In a modest house, filled with the scent of olive oil and fresh bread, a baby is born. His name, Pablo Diego Jose Francisco de Paula Juan Nepomuceno Crispin Crispiniano Maria Remedios de la Santísima Trinidad Ruiz Picasso, a name as grand and vibrant as the life he would live. The world outside was unaware of the magnitude of this moment. The sun rose like any other day, the waves kissed the shore, and life continued its dance. But inside that small home, a story was beginning, a story that would echo through the centuries. The infant Picasso lay in his mother's arms, and as she whispered lullabies into his tiny ears, the first whispers of his destiny began to stir in the air around him. His father, Jose Ruiz Blasco, a painter himself, stood by, his heart filled with hope that his son would one day follow in his artistic footsteps. Yet even he, with all his dreams and pride, could not have imagined the towering figure his son would become. As Pablo grew, he was not like other children. There was a depth to his gaze, a hunger in his spirit, as though he was constantly searching for something beyond the ordinary. While other children played with toys, Picasso found fascination in colors, in shapes, in the way light danced across the surface of objects. His father, noticing his son's early curiosity, began teaching him to paint. At first, it was just simple exercises, drawing pigeons, painting faces. But soon, the young Picasso surpassed his father's skill, his little hands moving with an unusual confidence for a boy of his age. It was as if the brush was an extension of his soul, expressing thoughts and emotions that words could never capture. There was something magical about the way Picasso viewed the world. He didn't see things as they were, but as they could be. To him, reality was not fixed, it was fluid, capable of transformation, just like the paint on his palette. He often told stories through his drawings, creating worlds where the ordinary became extraordinary. His childhood was filled with whispers of these fantastical ideas, shaping his imagination and fueling his creativity. But not all whispers were kind. the young Picasso was also a boy prone to deep moods, often withdrawing into himself, consumed by a sense of melancholy. These whispers of sadness would follow him throughout his life, seeping into his work during certain periods, most notably his Blue Period. Yet even in these moments of darkness, there was a light in Picasso, a resilience, a desire to capture the essence of human emotion, no matter how complex or painful. As he grew older, the whispers of tradition began to call out to him. His father, like many parents, hoped Picasso would follow a more conventional path, perhaps as a professor or a respected artist working within the boundaries of classical styles. But Picasso had already heard another whisper, one far more intoxicating, the whisper of rebellion. It was a call to break free from the old ways, to shatter the rules and create something entirely new. And so, with a heart full of courage and hands trembling with excitement, Picasso left Malaga behind, venturing into the larger world. Barcelona was his first stop, a city alive with energy and creative possibility. The whispers here were louder, more insistent, urging him to explore, to experiment. And yet, even in this bustling city, Picasso found moments of quiet, moments where he could hear the soft voice of his true self, telling him to keep pushing, keep discovering. He enrolled in the city's School of Fine Arts, where his extraordinary talent could no longer be ignored. The whispers of admiration grew around him. Professors and peers alike were captivated by his boldness, his willingness to break the mold. But Barcelona was not enough. There was another whisper, this one coming from a place of dreams, of endless possibility, Paris. The city of light, where art, philosophy, and innovation danced together under the glow of gas lamps. It was there, in the bohemian streets of Montmartre, that Picasso would truly begin to transform into the artist he was meant to be. As we whisper through these early years, we begin to see the foundations of Picasso's genius being laid. The whispers of Malaga, of his father's teachings, of the sorrow and joy that filled his childhood, all merged to form a tapestry of influences. Each whisper, each experience, shaped Picasso into the man who would one day revolutionize the art world. But this is only the beginning, the first chapter in a story of transformation, of vision, of a soul that refused to be confined by the limits of reality. And so, our journey with Picasso begins, not with a roar, but with a whisper, soft, yet powerful, guiding us into the heart of a legend. Picture a young boy, perhaps no older than 5, with eyes that seemed far too big for his small face, eyes that captured every detail of the world around him, as if he was already searching for something no one else could see. These were the eyes of Pablo Picasso, even as a child, full of wonder, curiosity, and an almost unsettling intensity. He was not like the other children in Malaga, who played in the sun-drenched streets without a care in the world. No, Pablo saw things differently. He always had. The whispers in his mind began early, a chorus of ideas and visions that he could not yet fully understand. His family, though ordinary in many ways, was filled with a quiet sense of artistry. His father, Jose, was a respected art teacher, known for his careful brushstrokes and attention to detail. In the evenings, after dinner, young Pablo would sit at his father's side, watching in awe as the older man painted scenes of pigeons and flowers with precise, deliberate movements. It was here, in these quiet moments, that the spark was lit. But Pablo was not content to merely watch. His hands itched to hold a brush, to capture the world in his own way. And so, one day, his father placed a brush in his small hands, guiding them over the canvas with the patience of a teacher and the pride of a father. Yet, even then, there was something different about Picasso. His movements were not those of a typical child learning to paint. There was an urgency in him, a need to express something deep inside, something that could not be confined by the lessons of tradition. As the whispers of creativity grew louder in his young mind, so too did the whispers of rebellion. Picasso was not interested in following the same path as his father. The meticulous, academic style that Jose had mastered seemed too rigid, too confined. Even as a child, Picasso longed to break free, to twist and bend the rules of art until they matched the wild, uncontained ideas swirling in his mind. His father, of course, noticed this. There was pride in seeing his son surpass him so quickly, but also a quiet concern. Jose had hoped that Picasso would follow in his footsteps, perhaps becoming a professor of art or a respected painter working within the bounds of traditional Spanish styles. But young Picasso had other plans, even if he couldn't yet put them into words. The whispers in his soul told him that there was more to see, more to create, more to understand about the world and the way it could be captured on canvas. At the age of just 7, Picasso created his first painting, Le Picador, a scene of a man on horseback at a bullfight. The subject was simple, but the energy within it was undeniable. There was a rawness, a vibrancy that seemed to defy the boy's young age. His family was astonished, but not entirely surprised. They had always known Pablo was different. He didn't just paint what he saw, he painted what he felt, what he imagined. And that, even in these early years, set him apart. As Picasso continued to grow, the whispers of the outside world began to reach him. Malaga, with its sun-bleached buildings and sleepy streets, was not a place for a boy with such restless energy. His family moved to La Coruña and later to Barcelona, and with each move, Picasso's world expanded. The whispers grew louder, more complex, filling his mind with new ideas, new possibilities. Barcelona, especially, was a revelation for the young artist. The city buzzed with life, with color, with an artistic spirit that fit his growing ambition. In Barcelona, Picasso enrolled in the School of Fine Arts, where his talents could no longer be ignored. Professors marveled at his skill, his ability to capture the essence of a subject with just a few strokes of his brush. But even here, surrounded by praise and admiration, the whispers of rebellion were never far away. Picasso chafed under the constraints of formal education. He didn't want to paint like everyone else. He wanted to create something new, something that no one had ever seen before. It was in these formative years that Picasso's big eyes, those eyes that seemed to see the world in a way no one else could, truly began to take in the possibilities of his future. He experimented with different styles, with different techniques, always pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable. He was still young, but the path was clear. Picasso was destined to break the rules, to reinvent art itself. And the whispers, both within and around him, urged him forward. But even as he pushed against the limits of tradition, there was something soft, something childlike still within him. He was, after all, just a boy with big eyes and bigger dreams. He hadn't yet become the master of Cubism, the creator of Guernica, or the revolutionary force that would reshape the world of art. For now, he was simply Picasso, the boy with the paintbrush, following the whispers of his heart. As Pablo Picasso grew into a young man, the bright whispers of childhood slowly faded, replaced by the darker, heavier whispers of life. By 1901, when Picasso was just 19 years old, the world had already begun to reveal its harsh realities to him. The laughter of his early years was now replaced with sighs of sorrow and reflection. He moved to Paris, the city of artists and dreamers, but the city of light did not immediately shine for Picasso. Instead, it cast shadows that clung to his soul, shadows that would define the art of his blue period. In these early Parisian years, the whispers of melancholy grew louder. They followed him through the narrow streets, creeping into his thoughts, his dreams, and most profoundly, into his paintings. It was a time of deep personal loss and struggle. His close friend, Carlos Casagemas, had tragically taken his own life, an event that haunted Picasso, leaving an indelible mark on his heart. Grief, like a heavy blanket, wrapped itself around him, suffocating the light and painting his world in shades of blue. This color, so often associated with calmness and serenity, became for Picasso the color of sorrow, of solitude, of human suffering. The young artist, once so full of curiosity and wonder, now found himself consumed by the darker aspects of existence. The whispers around him were no longer of joy or discovery, but of loss, of pain, and of the fragility of life. His paintings from this period, somber, reflective, and drenched in shades of blue, tell stories of isolation, poverty, and despair. Faces appear gaunt, bodies frail, eyes hollow, as though the life had been drained from them. And perhaps, in some ways, it had. Picasso saw the world through the eyes of a man who had witnessed tragedy, and his art became a mirror reflecting that inner turmoil. One of his most famous works from this time, The Old Guitarist, captures the essence of this melancholic period. The figure in the painting is hunched over, cradling a guitar as though it is the only thing keeping him tethered to the world. His face is gaunt, his body weak, and yet there is a quiet dignity in his posture, a resilience in the way he holds the instrument. It's as if Picasso, through this simple image, was whispering a message to the world. Even in the depths of sorrow, there is still beauty, still something worth holding on to. But the whispers of Picasso's blue period were not just personal, they were universal. He didn't only paint his own grief, he painted the grief of the world. The people in his paintings were not just individuals, but symbols of the human condition. The blind, the beggars, the lonely mothers, they were all part of a larger narrative, one that spoke of suffering, of the harsh realities faced by those at the edges of society. Through his art, Picasso gave voice to those who had none, painting their struggles in haunting shades of blue. Yet, even within this deep well of sadness, there were whispers of something else, something softer, more subtle. Beneath the layers of sorrow, there was a tenderness in Picasso's work, a quiet empathy for those who suffered. The figures in his paintings, though weary and broken, are not entirely without hope. There is a fragility to them, yes, but also a strength. They endure. They survive. And perhaps, in this way, Picasso was also whispering to himself, reminding himself that even in the darkest moments, there is still light to be found. Paris, with its narrow alleys and bustling cafes, became both a prison and a sanctuary for Picasso during these years. The city was alive with artists and intellectuals, yet for Picasso, it was a place of isolation. He wandered its streets, a stranger in a foreign land, seeking solace in his art but finding only more questions. The whispers around him spoke of a world in flux, of a society struggling with inequality, of the fragility of life itself. And Picasso, ever the observer, soaked it all in, letting these whispers guide his brush. His paintings during this time are not just portraits of individuals, they are portraits of the soul. Each face, each figure, seems to carry the weight of the world upon their shoulders. Yet, within their sorrow, there is also a sense of dignity, a quiet resilience that speaks to the enduring nature of the human spirit. Picasso's art became a meditation on suffering, not just his own, but that of humanity as a whole. As the Blue Period progressed, the whispers of melancholy began to evolve. Picasso, though still consumed by grief, started to find a new voice in his work. The figures in his paintings, once so solitary and fragile, began to show signs of connection, of reaching out to one another, of finding comfort in shared suffering. This shift was subtle but important. It marked the beginning of a transformation in Picasso's art, a movement away from the solitary sorrow of his early work towards something more communal, more connected. And so, the Blue Period, though born from personal tragedy, became something much larger. It was Picasso's way of whispering to the world, of expressing the pain that so often goes unspoken. His art from this time remains some of his most powerful, not because of its technical brilliance, but because of its emotional depth. Through shades of blue, Picasso told stories of love, loss, and the quiet strength that lies within each of us. In the dimly lit corners of Paris, where the city's glamour fades into shadow, Picasso found his subjects. They were not the wealthy patrons of the arts, nor the vibrant characters that filled the grand boulevards. No, Picasso's eyes were drawn to the forgotten souls, those who walked the thin line between life and despair, the beggars, the outcasts, the blind, and the broken. These were the people who filled the streets, and they soon filled Picasso's canvases, becoming the silent protagonists of his Blue Period. The whispers of the city spoke of their suffering. It was an age of poverty, of struggle, and Picasso, with his keen eyes and sensitive soul, absorbed it all. The figures in his paintings from this time are gaunt, their bodies thin and frail, their faces etched with the lines of hardship. Yet, even in their suffering, there is a quiet dignity to them, a resilience that echoes in the silence of the canvas. One such painting, The Blind Man's Meal, tells the story of a man, sightless and alone, sitting at a table with only a piece of bread and a jug of wine. His hands, rough and worn from a lifetime of struggle, reach out blindly, grasping for sustenance. The muted blues and grays that Picasso used create a cold, almost ghostly atmosphere where the man's isolation is palpable. Yet there is something more in this image, an unspoken connection between the viewer and the subject. Picasso invites us to not only see the man's physical blindness, but to feel his inner darkness, his loneliness. And in doing so, we are reminded of our own vulnerabilities, our own moments of isolation. But Picasso did not paint these figures to elicit pity. He did not want the viewer to merely feel sorry for them. Instead, through his art, he gave them a voice, a presence. They were no longer invisible, lost in the crowded streets. They were seen, their stories whispered through each brushstroke. Picasso's figures, though weary and worn, stood as symbols of the resilience of the human spirit. They survived, they endured, despite the crushing weight of their circumstances. In La Vie, one of the most poignant works from this period, Picasso explores the complexities of life, love, and death. The painting depicts a man and a woman standing together in a somber embrace, their eyes downcast, as if weighed down by the burdens of existence. Behind them, an older woman, perhaps a figure of fate or wisdom, gazes into the distance, holding a child in her arms. The figures, painted in muted blues, seemed to float in a dreamlike space, disconnected from the world, yet bound together by the shared experience of life's struggles. Through this haunting image, Picasso whispered of the cycles of life, the inescapable reality of suffering, and the fragile connections that bind us all. The people of Picasso's blue period were often those at the margins of society, but through his art, they became central. He gave them dignity, strength, and presence. They were no longer merely the poor or the broken. They were individuals with stories, with pain, and with beauty. His painting The Frugal Meal, for example, shows a couple sitting together at a small table, sharing a simple, sparse meal. Their faces are hollow, their expressions filled with a quiet sorrow. Yet, there is something tender in the way the man's hand rests on the woman's arm, a whisper of love and solidarity amidst the hardship. These figures were not just reflections of the people Picasso saw on the streets, they were also reflections of his own inner turmoil. The sadness in their eyes mirrored his own grief, the weight of their struggles mirrored his personal losses. Picasso, in painting them, was also painting a part of himself. The whispers of their stories became intertwined with his own, and in this way, his art became not just an exploration of external suffering, but an exploration of his own soul. The blues that filled his canvases were not just a color choice, they were a language, a way for Picasso to communicate the depth of emotion that words could never fully capture. Blue, with all its shades and nuances, became the voice of sorrow, of longing, of the quiet moments in life when the world feels too heavy. And yet, within this sadness, there was always a thread of hope, a whisper of something more. The figures in his paintings, though bent and broken, never fully succumb to despair. They survive. They endure. Picasso's blue period was not just about capturing the physical realities of poverty and suffering, it was about capturing the emotional landscape of those who lived in the shadows. His figures are alone, but they are not without feeling. They are distant, yet they draw us in, inviting us to share in their quiet moments of reflection and sorrow. Through his art, Picasso connected us to the invisible, to the whispers of the streets that so often go unheard. And so, as we walk through these early works, we are reminded of the power of art to transform, to elevate. Picasso, with his mastery of form and color, took the most fragile, the most overlooked members of society, and placed them at the center of his artistic universe. In doing so, he whispered a message that still resonates today, that there is beauty in every human story, that even in our darkest moments, there is still light to be found. Just as the night inevitably gives way to the dawn, Picasso's world, once drenched in the blues of sorrow, slowly began to change. The whispers of melancholy that had dominated his work during the blue period softened, making room for new whispers, whispers of warmth, of love, of hope. These whispers came in shades of pink, rose, and warm reds as Picasso entered what would become known as his Rose Period, a time of transformation both in his life and in his art. The shift in Picasso's art was not merely a change in color, but a reflection of a profound emotional and personal transformation. After years of wrestling with loss and sadness, he found himself uplifted by new love and new friendships. The dark clouds that had hung over his soul began to lift, allowing the sunlight of joy and affection to shine through. This newfound lightness of being was reflected in his paintings, where the somber, lonely figures of the blue period gave way to scenes filled with life, movement, and a gentle kind of tenderness. In Paris, the city that had once been a place of isolation for Picasso, he now found a vibrant, colorful community of artists, writers, and performers. Among them was Fernande Olivier, a woman who would become not only his muse but also the love of his life during this period. Fernande was a force of life, and her presence brought a new warmth to Picasso's world. The whispers of love, of passion, began to fill his heart, and this shift in his emotional landscape was clearly visible in his work. The Rose period marked a time when Picasso's figures began to soften. The angular, fragmented forms of his earlier works gave way to more rounded, flowing shapes. His subjects, acrobats, harlequins, clowns, and circus performers, danced and played across his canvases, their movements full of grace and lightness. These characters, often seen as metaphors for the human condition, were caught in moments of delicate balance, performing their acts in a world that was both fragile and beautiful. The circus, with its performers living on the edge of joy and sorrow, became a symbol for life itself, a balancing act where one moment you are soaring through the air, and the next, you are falling. One of Picasso's most iconic works from this period, Family of Saltimbanques, captures the essence of this transformation. In the painting, a group of circus performers, acrobats, clowns, and children stand together in a quiet, almost melancholic tableau. They are dressed in bright, colorful costumes, but there is a solemnity to their expressions, as if they are contemplating the dualities of life, the joy of performance, and the loneliness that often follows when the audience fades away. The figures stand together, yet each seems lost in their own world, a reminder that even in moments of connection, there is always a hint of solitude. The whispers of this painting speak of the fragile line between happiness and sorrow, a theme that Picasso would continue to explore throughout his life. But the Rose period was not just about lightness and joy. Even as Picasso embraced the warmth of new love and friendship, the deeper whispers of human vulnerability and uncertainty remained. His circus performers, though graceful and full of life, were often depicted in moments of stillness, as if caught between performances, when the applause had died down and they were left alone with their thoughts. These moments of pause, of quiet reflection, are where the true depth of Picasso's work during this period can be found. He was not simply painting joyful scenes of entertainment, he was painting the human experience with all its highs and lows. In Acrobat and Young Harlequin, we see two young figures standing side by side. The Harlequin, a symbol that would become central to Picasso's work, stands with his arm around the acrobat, yet their expressions are somber, almost introspective. The soft, rosy tones of the painting give it a dreamlike quality, as if the figures are suspended between reality and fantasy. Through this delicate interplay of color and form, Picasso whispers to us about the fragile nature of human relationships, the unspoken emotions that linger beneath the surface. The warmth of the Rose period was also a time for Picasso to explore the theme of family and community. In contrast to the isolation and loneliness of his Blue period, his Rose period paintings often depicted groups of people connected through their shared experiences. The circus performers, despite their individual struggles, were part of a larger community, a family of sorts, bound together by their shared life on the road. This sense of belonging, of finding connection amidst the chaos of life, became a central theme in Picasso's work during this time. Yet, even as he explored themes of love, connection, and community, Picasso never lost sight of the complexities of the human soul. His characters, though bright and colorful, often carried with them a quiet sense of melancholy. It was as if Picasso understood that life, even at its most joyful, is always tinged with the possibility of loss. The whisper of sadness, though softer now, was never far away. As Picasso moved through his Rose period, the whispers of his past continued to influence his work. He was, after all, an artist deeply connected to his emotions, and those emotions, whether joy or sorrow, always found their way into his art. The Rose period was a time of transition, of transformation, as Picasso learned to balance the light and the dark within himself. Through the soft, warm tones of his paintings, he whispered to the world that life, in all its beauty and complexity, is an act of balance, a dance between the joyful and the sorrowful, the fragile and the enduring. As Picasso's Rose period unfolded, the circus became a central theme in his art, its performers dancing across his canvases with a grace and fragility that mirrored the human experience. But the circus was not merely a spectacle of joy and wonder for Picasso. It was a metaphor, a whisper of the delicate balance between life's joys and sorrows, triumphs and defeats. The performers, acrobats, clowns, and harlequins embodied this duality, their lives a constant performance on the thin line between elation and despair. The circus was a world of its own, a place where the unusual was celebrated and the extraordinary became routine. For Picasso, it was more than entertainment, it was a reflection of the human condition, a stage upon which the great dramas of existence played out. His circus figures were not always depicted in the throes of performance, suspended in midair or juggling brightly colored balls. Instead, he often captured them in moments of quiet reflection, away from the gaze of the audience, when the makeup had been removed and the applause had died away. It was in these quiet moments, between acts, that the true essence of life could be felt, the whisper of what it means to be human. In Girl on a Ball, one of Picasso's most famous works from this period, we see the fragility of life balanced with its beauty. A young girl, her body lithe and strong, balances delicately on a ball, her muscles taut with concentration. Behind her, a figure, an older, more weary man, sits on a box, his posture slumped, his face edged with the weariness of life. The contrast between the two figures is striking, the girl, full of youthful energy and grace, and the man, weighed down by time and experience. Through this juxtaposition, Picasso whispers to us about the fleeting nature of youth and the inevitability of aging. The girl's balancing act becomes a symbol of life itself, an ever-precarious dance between stability and collapse. Picasso's fascination with the circus performers was not just about their physical feats, but also about their emotional lives. He saw in them a reflection of his own existence as an artist, constantly performing, constantly striving to maintain a delicate balance between his inner world and the expectations of the outer world. The Harlequin, a figure that would become a recurring motif in Picasso's work, was particularly symbolic of this tension. The Harlequin, with his checkered costume and playful mask, was both a performer and a disguise, an emblem of the artist who hides his true self behind the facade of entertainment. Picasso, too, often felt like a performer, using his art to communicate his deepest emotions while keeping certain aspects of his personal life hidden behind the mask of fame and public persona. In Acrobat's Family with a Monkey, Picasso explores the theme of family within the circus world. The painting shows a family of performers, a father, a mother, and a child, standing together with a small monkey perched on a leash. Despite their colorful costumes, there is a quiet solemnity in their expressions, a sense of isolation despite their closeness. The family, like Picasso himself, is part of a larger community, the circus, but they also stand apart, existing in their own world, bound together by both love and the shared hardships of their nomadic life. The monkey, a playful addition, adds a touch of whimsy, yet it also serves as a reminder of the unpredictable and sometimes chaotic nature of life. Picasso whispers to us through this painting about the complexity of human relationships, how love and duty, joy and sorrow are often intertwined. The circus performers in Picasso's work are also symbols of transformation. Just as they don different costumes and roles in each performance, so too does Picasso transform through his art. The Rose period marked a time when he was shedding the sorrow of the Blue period, but he was not completely free of it. The figures in his paintings are often caught in moments of transition between performances, between emotions, between states of being. This sense of transformation is central to the human experience, Picasso seemed to suggest. We are all, in some ways, like the acrobats and clowns, constantly changing, adapting, and balancing the demands of life. Another significant work from this time, The Harlequin's Family, again highlights the circus as a metaphor for life's fragility. The Harlequin stands tall, his expression unreadable, his costume bright and patterned. Beside him, a woman, perhaps his partner or muse, cradles a child. The scene is both intimate and distant. There is love here, but also a sense of detachment. The Harlequin, though surrounded by his family, seems lost in thought, perhaps contemplating the next performance or the pressures of his role. The whispers in this painting speak of the complexities of human roles, how we must all perform certain duties, whether as parents, lovers, or individuals, and how, in the midst of it all, we must balance the private self with the public persona. The circus, with all its color, movement, and spectacle, provided Picasso with a rich tapestry through which he could explore the deeper questions of life. The acrobats, with their feats of strength and agility, became symbols of resilience, of the human capacity to endure. The clowns, with their painted smiles and sorrowful eyes, represented the masks we all wear, the hidden emotions that lie just beneath the surface. And the Harlequin, ever-changing, ever-performing, became the embodiment of Picasso himself, a man constantly transforming, both in his art and in his life. In the end, the circus of life, as depicted by Picasso, is not just about performance, it is about survival. It is about the delicate balance between joy and sorrow, between youth and age, between the inner self and the outer world. Through the whispers of his Rose period, Picasso invites us to look beyond the spectacle, to see the human stories behind the performance, and to recognize that, like the circus performers, we are all walking a fine line, balancing the beauty and the fragility of existence. As Picasso's artistic journey progressed, the whispers that had once guided him through the tender warmth of the Rose period began to shift again. This time, the whispers grew more insistent, more rebellious. They urged him to break free from the conventions of the past, to shatter the comfortable illusions of realism, and to see the world through new eyes. It was in these moments, around 1907, that Picasso, along with fellow artist Georges Braque, began to embark on a radical new path, one that would change the course of modern art forever. This was the birth of Cubism, a movement that would challenge the very nature of how art could represent reality. For Picasso, the whispers of tradition had grown stale. He was no longer satisfied with merely replicating the world as it appeared to the naked eye. He had mastered form, color, and technique, but now he wanted something more. He wanted to deconstruct reality, to break it into pieces, and to reassemble it in a way that revealed not just how things looked, but how they felt, how they existed from multiple perspectives at once. Cubism was not just a style, it was a revolution, a new language of art that allowed Picasso to express the complexity of the modern world. The inspiration for this bold new approach came from many sources, but perhaps none more significant than the ancient art of Africa and Iberia. Picasso was fascinated by the way traditional African masks distorted the human face, reducing it to its most elemental shapes while still capturing its spirit. These masks, with their exaggerated features and abstract forms, whispered to Picasso of a deeper truth that the essence of a subject could be captured not through perfect representation, but through fragmentation and reconstruction. This idea took root in one of Picasso's most groundbreaking works, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, painted in 1907. The painting depicts 5 women, but these are not women as they would appear in reality. Their faces are sharp, angular, their bodies distorted into flat planes and fragmented shapes. Some of the women's faces resemble African masks, while others have the geometric sharpness of Iberian sculpture. The background is as fragmented as the figures themselves, the entire canvas a cacophony of shapes and colors that challenge the viewer's perception of space and form. This was Picasso's declaration of artistic independence, his way of breaking free from the confines of tradition and redefining what art could be. Les Demoiselles d'Avignon shocked the art world. Many were baffled, some were outraged, but no one could ignore the power of Picasso's vision. It was as though he had taken a mirror to reality, shattered it into pieces, and then handed it back to the viewer in a way that demanded they see the world differently. The painting whispered of a new reality, one where objects, people, and spaces could no longer be viewed from a single, fixed perspective. Picasso was no longer content to show the world from one angle. He wanted to show it from every angle at once to capture the full complexity of existence. As Cubism evolved, Picasso and Braque continued to push the boundaries of form and perspective. They began to break objects down into simple geometric shapes, cubes, spheres, cones, representing them from multiple viewpoints simultaneously. A face might be shown from both the front and the side in the same painting. A guitar might be split into a dozen angular planes, each representing a different aspect of its form. The effect was disorienting at first, as though reality had been fractured into pieces, but there was a method to this madness. Picasso was not just breaking the rules, he was rewriting them, creating a new artistic language that could express the complexity of the modern world. One of the key ideas behind Cubism was that reality is not fixed. We do not experience the world in static, isolated moments. Instead, we see things from multiple perspectives, both physically and emotionally, all at once. Picasso's Cubist works reflected this understanding, offering the viewer a glimpse into the fragmented nature of perception. In Girl with a Mandolin, for example, the figure of a woman is broken into overlapping planes, her body and the mandolin she holds dissolving into a series of geometric shapes. Yet, despite the abstraction, there is still a sense of harmony, a rhythm to the composition that echoes the music she might be playing. Picasso whispered to the viewer through these fragmented forms, asking them to see not just the subject, but the space around it, the air, the movement, the energy that connects everything. Cubism was about more than just abstraction, it was about questioning the very nature of reality. Picasso and Braque were not just painting objects, they were painting the experience of seeing those objects, the way light, shadow, and perspective constantly shift our perception. In this way, Cubism became a visual metaphor for the complexity of human experience. Just as we are never truly seen from a single angle, the world around us is never fully understood in a single moment. Picasso's art, fragmented and reassembled, whispered of the infinite ways in which reality can be experienced and interpreted. But as radical as Cubism was, Picasso never lost sight of the emotional depth behind his work. His paintings, even in their most abstract forms, still conveyed a sense of humanity, of life lived in all its complexity. The fragmented faces, the disjointed bodies, these were not just exercises in geometry, they were expressions of the fractured, multifaceted nature of existence. Picasso's Cubist works were a way of saying that reality is not neat or simple, it is complex, messy, and always in flux. The rules of art, like the rules of life, were made to be broken. In breaking the rules of art, Picasso opened the door to countless possibilities. His work during the Cubist period laid the foundation for the modern art movements that followed, from surrealism to abstract expressionism. But more than that, Cubism was a whisper of freedom, a reminder that art and life should not be confined by tradition. Picasso had shattered the mirror of reality, and in the broken pieces, he found a new way to see the world. In 1907, Picasso created a painting that would not just break the rules of art, but shatter them entirely, leaving the fragments scattered for future generations to piece back together in new ways. This painting, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, was unlike anything the art world had ever seen. It was bold, jarring, and unapologetically confrontational, a whisper that grew into a roar, challenging the very foundation of beauty and representation in art. But Les Demoiselles d'Avignon was not just a painting, it was a declaration of Picasso's intent to revolutionize art, to tear apart the comfortable illusions of the past and reveal the raw, unfiltered truth beneath. At first glance, the painting is a scene of 5 women, but these women are not like the classical figures of beauty seen in Renaissance or Baroque art. Their bodies are sharp, angular, and their faces are grotesquely distorted, some of them resembling the African masks Picasso had come to admire. The background is fragmented, and the women seem to exist in a space that is neither here nor there, as if reality itself had been deconstructed and rearranged. There is no soft lighting, no gentle curves, only jagged lines and harsh planes that cut through the viewer's perception of what a painting should be. The women in Les Demoiselles d'Avignon are not portrayed in a way that is meant to comfort or please the eye. They do not conform to traditional notions of beauty or femininity. Their gazes are direct, almost aggressive, confronting the viewer with an unsettling intensity. Their bodies are not idealized. Instead, they are fragmented, broken down into geometric shapes that seem to defy the natural curves of the human form. Picasso was not interested in depicting these women as objects of desire. He wanted to challenge the viewer, to force them to see beyond the surface. The painting was inspired by a visit Picasso made to a brothel in Barcelona, and the title, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, refers to the street in the city's red light district. But this is not a simple portrayal of prostitutes, it is a statement about the complexity of human sexuality, identity, and the body. Picasso deconstructed these women, not just physically, but symbolically, stripping away the layers of social and artistic conventions that had dictated how the female form should be represented. In doing so, he revealed a raw, primal energy, a force that existed outside of the polished, idealized world of traditional art. The faces of the women in Les Demoiselles d'Avignon are perhaps the most striking element of the painting. 2 of the figures have faces that are clearly inspired by African masks, while the others are distorted in ways that suggest the influence of Iberian sculpture. Picasso was fascinated by the way these non-Western art forms represented the human face, not as a perfect, harmonious whole, but as a series of abstract, exaggerated features that conveyed a deeper sense of character and emotion. In using these influences, Picasso was breaking free from the Eurocentric traditions of art, embracing a more global, more primal understanding of the human form. The painting was a shock to the art world. Even Picasso's close friends and collaborators were taken aback by its radical nature. Georges Braque, who would later become Picasso's partner in the development of Cubism, reportedly said the painting made him feel as if he were drinking gasoline and spitting fire. It was a violent, disorienting experience, a far cry from the calm beauty of the landscapes and portraits that had dominated Western art for centuries. But this was exactly what Picasso intended. He wanted to disrupt, to provoke, to make people question their assumptions about art, beauty, and reality itself. At its core, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon was Picasso's way of rejecting the idea that art had to be beautiful to be meaningful. For centuries, artists had strived to capture the beauty of the human form, to idealize it, to present it in a way that was pleasing to the eye. But Picasso understood that there was more to the human experience than beauty. There was also fear, tension, and conflict. In this painting, he captured all of these emotions, blending them together in a way that was both unsettling and captivating. The fractured, angular forms of the women in Les Demoiselles d'Avignon were a precursor to the development of Cubism, a movement that would soon revolutionize the way artists approached form and perspective. In this painting, Picasso was already beginning to break down the human body into its basic shapes, cubes, triangles, and spheres, foreshadowing the abstract, fragmented style that would define his work in the years to come. But more than that, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon was a philosophical statement. It was a rejection of the idea that art had to reflect reality as it appeared to the eye. Instead, Picasso was suggesting that art could reflect reality as it was felt, as it was experienced from within. The women in the painting are not passive subjects, they are active participants in the viewer's experience. Their gazes, though distorted, are powerful, almost confrontational. They challenge the viewer to look deeper, to see beyond the surface, to question the very nature of representation. Picasso was not just painting these women, he was inviting the viewer to engage with them on a deeper, more intellectual level. In the end, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon was not just a painting, it was a revolution. It marked the beginning of Picasso's journey into Cubism, but more importantly, it signaled a new way of thinking about art. It whispered, then shouted, that the rules of beauty, form, and perspective were made to be broken. Picasso had shattered the illusion of beauty, and in doing so, he had opened the door to a new era of artistic freedom. In 1937, amidst the chaos and devastation of the Spanish Civil War, Pablo Picasso created one of his most powerful and haunting masterpieces, Guernica. It was not just a painting, it was a scream, or raw, visceral cry against the horrors of war, a monumental work that captured the agony of an entire nation and the brutality of human conflict. Through this vast and chaotic canvas, Picasso whispered the pain of his homeland, but the whisper grew louder, becoming a shout that resonated across the world. The town of Guernica, a quiet Basque village in northern Spain, became the symbol of unspeakable violence on April 26, 1937. On that day, Nazi planes, supporting the fascist forces of General Francisco Franco, bombed the town, reducing it to rubble. Innocent civilians, men, women, and children, were caught in the crossfire, their lives destroyed in an instant. The bombing of Guernica was not just a military strike, it was an act of terror meant to break the spirit of the people. And it was this spirit, this unbreakable will of the human soul, that Picasso captured in his monumental painting. Guernica is a mural-sized work stretching over 11 feet tall and 25 feet wide. The sheer scale of the painting mirrors the scale of the tragedy it depicts. The figures on the canvas are twisted, distorted, their bodies contorted in pain and fear. A mother screams in agony, clutching her dead child. A bull, symbolizing brutality and darkness, stands over the chaos. A horse, representing innocence and suffering, wails in terror as it collapses in the center of the scene. The painting is a swirl of fragmented shapes and sharp angles, reflecting the shattered world Picasso saw in the aftermath of the bombing. The color palette of Guernica is stark, black, white, and shades of gray dominate the canvas. Picasso chose this limited palette to strip away any distraction, to focus the viewer's attention solely on the raw emotion of the scene. The absence of color makes the violence feel even more immediate, more real. It's as if the life has been drained from the figures, leaving only their suffering behind. The whispers of grief and horror echo through the muted tones, creating a haunting silence that hangs over the painting like a shroud. But Guernica is not just a depiction of physical destruction, it is a portrayal of the emotional and psychological devastation of war. The figures on the canvas are not realistic, they are distorted, fragmented, their faces contorted into unnatural shapes that convey a sense of utter despair. Picasso was not interested in documenting the bombing in a literal way. Instead, he wanted to capture the emotional truth of the event, the way it felt to experience such unimaginable horror. The fragmentation of the figures mirrors the way war shatters lives, tearing apart families, communities, and nations. One of the most striking elements of Guernica is the way Picasso uses symbolism to convey deeper meanings. The bull, a recurring motif in his work, stands as a symbol of brutality and darkness, a representation of the forces that perpetuate violence and destruction. The horse, on the other hand, represents the innocent victims of war, its broken, agonized form a powerful reminder of the suffering inflicted on those who are caught in the crossfire. Above the scene, a light bulb in the shape of an eye casts a cold, unfeeling gaze over the destruction below, perhaps symbolizing the harsh, indifferent light of modern technology and warfare. Yet, despite the overwhelming sense of despair that permeates the painting, there are also whispers of resilience, of the enduring strength of the human spirit. The figures, though broken and twisted, are still alive. They scream, they cry, they fight. The woman holding her dead child is a figure of unimaginable sorrow, but she is also a symbol of maternal love, of the unbreakable bond between mother and child. The figure with an outstretched arm, holding a broken sword, is a symbol of defiance, of the will to resist even in the face of overwhelming destruction. Picasso, through these figures, whispers that even in the darkest moments of human history, there is still hope, still the possibility of resistance and survival. The composition of Guernica is chaotic, but within the chaos, there is a deliberate structure. The figures are arranged in a way that draws the eye from one corner of the canvas to the next, creating a sense of movement and urgency. The jagged lines and fragmented shapes echo the violence and destruction of the bombing, but they also serve to create a sense of unity within the painting. Each figure, though isolated in its own suffering, is connected to the others, forming a collective image of grief and resistance. This sense of unity reflects Picasso's belief in the power of art to bring people together, to inspire solidarity in the face of adversity. When Guernica was first displayed at the 1937 Paris International Exposition, it caused an immediate sensation. The painting, with its stark portrayal of suffering and devastation, was a bold political statement, a direct condemnation of the violence and oppression of fascism. For Picasso, Guernica was more than just a personal expression of grief. It was a cry for justice, a call to the world to recognize the horrors of war and to stand against tyranny. The whispers of the painting spread far beyond the walls of the exhibition, reaching audiences across the globe and cementing Picasso's place not only as an artist but as a voice of conscience in a world torn apart by conflict. Even today, Guernica remains one of the most powerful anti-war statements in the history of art. Its haunting figures and stark imagery continue to speak to the human experience of suffering, reminding us of the devastating cost of violence. Picasso, through this monumental work, whispered a message that transcends time and place, that the true horror of war is not just the destruction of buildings and bodies, but the destruction of humanity itself. Every inch of Guernica is charged with emotion, every figure a symbol of pain, resistance, or the complex contradictions of war. Picasso didn't just paint a scene of destruction, he filled his canvas with powerful symbols that speak in whispers to those willing to listen. These symbols, each carefully chosen, combine to create a chorus of suffering that echoes through time, revealing layers of meaning far beyond the initial shock of the imagery. To look at Guernica is to enter a world of silent voices, each telling its own story of loss, despair, and the unbreakable will to survive. One of the central figures in Guernica is the horse, a creature caught in the throes of agony. Its body is twisted, mouth open in a scream that seems to reverberate across the canvas. The horse represents more than just an animal in pain, it is a symbol of the innocent victims of war, those caught in the chaos with no way to escape. The horse's suffering mirrors the anguish of the people of Guernica, trampled under the merciless foot of violence. Picasso used the horse to symbolize both the vulnerability of life and the senseless destruction of war. Its scream is not just that of an animal but of humanity itself, crying out in the face of unspeakable horror. Above the horse, a light bulb shaped like a glaring, unfeeling eye watches over the scene. This eye, cold and mechanical, casts a harsh light on the destruction below, but it offers no comfort, no warmth. It has often been interpreted as a symbol of modern warfare, of technology turned against humanity. In the context of the Spanish Civil War, the eye may represent the aerial bombardments that have become a hallmark of modern conflicts, machines of war raining destruction from above, indifferent to the lives they obliterate. The light bulb, with its sharp rays, is a reminder of the impersonal nature of modern violence, where war is waged from a distance, with the push of a button or the pull of a lever. It is an eye that sees everything but understands nothing, a symbol of the disconnection between human suffering and the cold machinery of death. To the right of the horse, we find a weeping woman cradling her dead child. She is a figure of unbearable sorrow, her face contorted in grief, her mouth open in a silent wail. This mother, one of the most heart-wrenching figures in the painting, is a universal symbol of the pain of loss, especially the loss of innocent lives in times of war. Her posture echoes the traditional image of the Pietà, where the Virgin Mary mourns the death of Christ. Yet in Picasso's version, there is no divine resolution, no promise of resurrection, only endless grief. The mother's pain is raw and immediate, her scream frozen in time. She embodies the personal tragedies that war leaves in its wake, the unbearable loss of those who are loved, yet powerless to protect. Just beneath her, a broken sword lies in the hand of a fallen warrior, his body fragmented and distorted. This is a symbol of resistance, but also of defeat. The sword, though shattered, is still grasped tightly, symbolizing the will to fight even in the face of overwhelming destruction. The warrior's broken form suggests the collapse of hope, yet the presence of the sword hints at defiance, a refusal to be entirely subdued by the forces of tyranny. This duality, the tension between defeat and resistance, runs throughout Guernica, where every figure is caught between submission and survival. The fallen warrior's broken sword whispers that though bodies may be broken, the spirit to resist remains even in the darkest moments. Moving to the left side of the canvas, we encounter another striking figure, a woman with her arms raised, her face twisted in terror as she flees from the flames consuming her home. This woman, whose distorted body stretches upward as if trying to escape the fire, symbolizes the helplessness of civilians caught in the destruction of war. Her raised arms are a gesture of desperation, her face a mask of terror. She is running, but there is nowhere to run. The flames that lick at her back are not just the literal fires of Guernica's destruction, they are the fires of war itself, consuming everything in their path. Her body, elongated and exaggerated, adds to the sense of panic, as if her very essence is being stretched and torn apart by the violence that surrounds her. At the bottom of the canvas, beneath the chaos, lies a figure whose face is nearly indistinguishable, barely visible among the wreckage. This person, crushed and almost lost in the devastation, represents the forgotten victims of war, the countless lives erased from history by the brutality of conflict. Picasso doesn't give this figure a clear identity, perhaps to symbolize how war dehumanizes its victims, reducing them to nameless casualties. Yet, even in death, this figure remains part of the narrative of Guernica, a reminder that every life lost is a story untold, a tragedy that deserves to be remembered. Another key symbol in Guernica is the bull, a creature often associated with Picasso's Spanish heritage, but here it takes on a darker meaning. Unlike the horse, which is writhing in agony, the bull stands almost still, seemingly unaffected by the carnage around it. Its dark, powerful form looms over the chaos, its expression inscrutable. Some interpretations suggest that the bull represents the forces of destruction and brutality that bring about war, the cold, unfeeling entities that instigate violence without thought for its consequences. Others see the bull as a symbol of resistance, of Spain itself, enduring the assault of fascism but remaining unbroken. Whatever the bull represents, its presence is commanding and ominous, a silent witness to the destruction unfolding below. Through these symbols, Picasso created not just a painting, but a profound commentary on the nature of war and its impact on humanity. Guernica speaks to us on multiple levels, its images whispering of personal grief, collective suffering, and the senselessness of violence. Each figure tells a part of the story, but together they form a tapestry of pain and resilience, of destruction and the enduring will to survive. Picasso's genius in Guernica lies not only in his ability to depict the physical horrors of war, but in his use of symbols to convey deeper, more universal truths. The fragmented figures, the distorted faces, the broken objects, all come together to create a work that transcends its specific historical context, becoming a timeless reminder of the cost of conflict. The whispers of Guernica are not confined to the past, they continue to speak to us today, reminding us of the fragility of peace and the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable suffering. Picasso was not a man bound by rules, nor was he content to linger in one place for too long. Like the phases of the moon or the changing tides, his art was in constant motion, always evolving, always seeking new forms of expression. Throughout his life, Picasso reinvented himself again and again, transforming his style, his medium, and even his way of seeing the world. He was a master of transformation, and it was this restless spirit of innovation that kept his work fresh, exciting, and always ahead of its time. From the gentle, melancholy blues of his blue period to the vibrant, joyous pinks of the rose period, Picasso's art reflected the emotional landscape of his life. But his transformations were not just driven by his emotions, they were also a reflection of his insatiable curiosity and his refusal to be confined by any single artistic tradition. Where many artists might have found comfort in perfecting a single style, Picasso saw limitations. He craved freedom, the ability to explore the infinite possibilities of art. And so, he continuously broke down what he had created, only to rebuild it in new and unexpected ways. Cubism, of course, was one of his most famous transformations, a revolution that redefined the very nature of art. But even within Cubism, Picasso refused to stay in one place for too long. After experimenting with the sharp angles and fragmented forms of analytical cubism, he moved into synthetic cubism, incorporating collage and found objects into his work, blending the lines between painting and sculpture. With each new development, Picasso was pushing the boundaries of what art could be, challenging the viewer to see the world from multiple perspectives at once. But Picasso's transformations were not limited to his style. He was also a master of multiple mediums. From painting to sculpture, from ceramics to printmaking, Picasso embraced every form of artistic expression available to him. He approached each new medium with the same fearless spirit, eager to discover what it could offer, how it could help him communicate his ideas. His sculptures, like his paintings, broke the rules of convention. He used found objects, pieces of wood, metal, even bicycle parts, and transformed them into art, giving everyday objects new life and new meaning. In his hands, a simple object like a chair or a piece of scrap metal became something extraordinary, something that told a story. One of the most striking examples of Picasso's ability to transform everyday materials into art is his famous bicycle head, created in 1942. In this sculpture, Picasso took the handlebars and seat of a bicycle and rearranged them to form the head of a bull. It was a simple yet brilliant piece, a perfect example of Picasso's ability to see beyond the ordinary, to take what others might discard and turn it into something new and powerful. This talent for transformation, this ability to see the world not as it is, but as it could be, was one of the hallmarks of Picasso's genius. Even in his later years, when many artists might have slowed down or settled into a comfortable routine, Picasso continued to transform. He explored new forms of abstraction, revisited old themes with fresh eyes, and constantly pushed himself to create something new. He never allowed himself to become static, to fall into repetition. Instead, he embraced the idea that art, like life, is a process of constant change. Picasso's work was always moving forward, always evolving, always transforming. His ability to reinvent himself over and over again is one of the reasons why Picasso's legacy remains so strong today. While other artists may be remembered for a single style or a particular period, Picasso's body of work is a kaleidoscope of different forms, ideas, and emotions. He was a man who refused to be defined by a single label, and his art reflects that spirit of freedom and experimentation. But perhaps the most profound transformation in Picasso's life was not in his art, but in the way he saw the world. Over time, he developed a unique vision that allowed him to see beyond the surface, to see the hidden layers of meaning in everything around him. Whether it was a woman's face, a broken piece of furniture, or the horrors of war, Picasso saw not just what was in front of him, but what lay beneath, the emotions, the stories, the deeper truths that could only be expressed through art. This ability to see the world in such a multifaceted way is what made Picasso not just a great artist, but a visionary. Even Picasso's personal life was marked by transformation. He was a man of many loves, and each relationship brought new inspiration, new challenges, and new insights. His muses, Fernande Olivier, Olga Koklova, Marie-Therese Walter, Dora Maar, Françoise Gillet, and Jacqueline Roquet, each played a role in shaping his work, influencing not only the content of his art but also its form. Picasso's relationships were as tumultuous and passionate as his art, and just as his artistic style evolved, so too did his personal life, marked by periods of great joy and profound turmoil. Ultimately, Picasso's life and work are a testament to the power of transformation. He was an artist who never stopped exploring, never stopped experimenting, and never stopped pushing the boundaries of what art could be. His genius lay in his ability to see the world not as something fixed and unchangeable, but as something fluid, something that could always be reshaped, reimagined, and transformed. Picasso's art is a reminder that transformation is not just possible, it is essential, both in art and in life. Pablo Picasso once famously said, "Every act of creation is first an act of destruction." These words, as fierce as they are poetic, echo throughout his life and work. Picasso was a rebel, a man who refused to conform, who saw the world not through the lens of tradition but as a vast canvas waiting to be reimagined. His art was his weapon, and with each stroke of his brush, each fragment of a sculpture, each new experiment in style, he shattered the rules of the past and forged a new path forward. To understand Picasso is to understand that he was never satisfied with the status quo. He was always pushing, always questioning, always challenging. From his earliest days as an artist, Picasso resisted convention. Even as a young man, when he studied at the Royal Academy of San Fernando in Madrid, he grew frustrated with the rigid classical training. The academic approach felt suffocating to him, confining his wild and boundless imagination. The whispers of rebellion began early, stirring within him as he yearned to break free from the constraints of tradition. He left the academy, seeking his own path, and from that moment on, he would never again allow his creativity to be confined by anyone else's rules. In the streets of Paris, Picasso found his true artistic home, a city that buzzed with the energy of revolution and innovation. The avant-garde movement was in full swing, and Picasso thrived in this environment of creative freedom. Surrounded by poets, musicians, and fellow artists, he drank in the ideas that floated through the smoky cafes of Montmartre. But even among the avant-garde, Picasso stood apart. He wasn't interested in merely following the trends of the time, he wanted to create something entirely new. And so, with Cubism, he did just that, turning the art world on its head and rewriting the rules of painting and sculpture. Picasso's defiance of convention wasn't limited to his artistic style. His personal life, too, was marked by a refusal to conform to society's expectations. He loved passionately and often chaotically, his relationships with women as tempestuous as his art. Each of his muses brought something new to his work, but Picasso was never content to remain in one place, in one relationship, for too long. His life was a whirlwind of constant change, of transformation and reinvention, and his romantic entanglements were no exception. Yet, despite the turbulence, These relationships fueled some of his greatest works, and the women in his life were often immortalized in his paintings, each one representing a different phase of his artistic evolution. Even as Picasso grew older, when many artists might have settled into a comfortable routine, he remained a rebel. He never allowed himself to be boxed in, never allowed his art to stagnate. In his later years, while living in the south of France, Picasso continued to experiment, to push the boundaries of what art could be. He worked with ceramics, printmaking, and sculpture, always searching for new ways to express himself. His work became more abstract, more expressive, but it never lost the intensity or the defiance that had defined his early career. Picasso was a man who refused to grow complacent, who saw each new day as an opportunity to create, to destroy, and to reinvent. One of the most striking examples of Picasso's rebellious spirit can be found in his Minotaur series. The Minotaur, a mythical creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull, became a recurring motif in Picasso's work, symbolizing both the artist's inner turmoil and his refusal to be tamed. The Minotaur was a creature of chaos, of raw, primal energy, and through this figure, Picasso explored themes of violence, power, and sexuality. But the Minotaur was also a symbol of Picasso himself, a being caught between worlds, between order and chaos, between creation and destruction. Through the Minotaur, Picasso whispered of his own struggles, his own battles with the forces that sought to contain him. Throughout his life, Picasso's art remained a reflection of his defiance, his unwillingness to accept the world as it was. In Guernica, his monumental anti-war painting, Picasso channeled his rage against the atrocities of the Spanish Civil War, using his art to speak out against fascism and oppression. Guernica was not just a painting, it was a manifesto, a cry of resistance against the violence that was tearing his homeland apart. Picasso, ever the rebel, refused to remain silent in the face of injustice, and his art became his voice, a weapon against the forces of darkness. Even in the final years of his life, Picasso never stopped creating, never stopped defying the expectations placed upon him. At an age when most artists would have retired, Picasso was still producing work at an astonishing rate, experimenting with new forms and ideas. He painted, sculpted, and drew with the same passion and intensity that had defined his youth. His later works, though often more abstract and playful, still carried the same spirit of rebellion that had always driven him. Picasso never allowed himself to be tamed, never allowed his art to be confined by tradition or expectation. In many ways, Picasso's life was a testament to the power of defiance. He was a man who refused to accept limits, who saw every boundary as something to be pushed against, every rule as something to be broken. His art was a reflection of this spirit, a visual manifestation of his lifelong rebellion. Picasso's genius lay not only in his technical skill or his innovative use of form and color, but in his relentless drive to challenge the status quo. He was a man who never stopped questioning, never stopped searching for new ways to see the world. As we look back on Picasso's life and work, we see a man who was not content to simply follow in the footsteps of those who came before him. He was a trailblazer, a visionary, and most importantly, a rebel. His art, in all its many forms and phases, was a constant reminder that creation and destruction are two sides of the same coin, that to create something new, one must first be willing to destroy the old. Picasso's legacy is one of transformation, but also of defiance, a reminder that art, like life, is a process of endless reinvention. As the years passed and Picasso's name became synonymous with artistic genius, the whispers of his legacy began to spread, far beyond the walls of galleries and museums. His work, once shocking and revolutionary, had now entered the hearts and minds of people across the globe. But Picasso's art was never meant to be confined to a single era or style. It was timeless, forever evolving, much like the man himself. His legacy was not just in the works he left behind, but in the way he forever changed how the world understood art, creativity, and the human spirit. Picasso's ability to transcend time lay in his refusal to stay still. Throughout his life, he embraced every phase, every shift in the world around him, allowing these moments to seep into his art. Whether through the anguish of war captured in Guernica, the fragmented beauty of Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, or the tender intimacy of his portraits of lovers and friends, Picasso's work was a mirror to the times he lived in. But more than that, his art spoke to universal truths: pain, joy, love, loss, things that transcend history and culture. It is this universality that ensures Picasso's art will live on, not just as historical artifacts, but as living, breathing pieces of human experience. In the soft, quiet moments of life, as people sit and gaze upon his works, they can feel the pulse of Picasso's emotions, the energy he infused into each stroke, each fragment of color. His art invites the viewer not just to look, but to feel, to step inside the mind of a man who saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. It is this ability to evoke emotion, to create connection across time and space, that keeps Picasso's work alive, long after his hands have stopped creating. One of the reasons Picasso's art endures is because it challenges the viewer to think differently. His bold experiments with form and perspective continue to push boundaries, asking us to question the world around us and the way we perceive it. In his Cubist works, for example, Picasso shattered the illusion of fixed perspective, showing us that there is no single way to view the world. This idea, so radical at the time, has now become part of the fabric of modern thought. We no longer accept that there is only one truth, one perspective. Picasso's art opened the door to a more fluid, open way of thinking, a legacy that reaches far beyond the art world. Yet for all his innovation, there is also something deeply human in Picasso's work, something that speaks to our most primal emotions. His depictions of love and desire, of grief and suffering, of joy and playfulness, resonate with anyone who has ever felt deeply. The figures in his paintings, though sometimes abstract or distorted, are always rooted in the human experience. They are us, our mothers and fathers, our friends and lovers, our children and elders. Picasso captured the essence of life in all its complexity, and in doing so, created art that speaks to every generation. But Picasso's legacy is not just in the works themselves, it is in the spirit of freedom he embodied. He taught the world that art could be anything, that creativity had no limits. By constantly breaking the rules and reinventing himself, Picasso gave permission to future generations of artists to do the same. His influence can be seen in the bold experiments of abstract art, in the emotional intensity of expressionism, in the playful subversions of surrealism. Wherever artists are pushing boundaries, Picasso's spirit is there, whispering that it's okay to destroy what came before in order to create something new. Even as the world around him changed, through wars, revolutions, technological advances, Picasso remained relevant. His art evolved alongside these shifts, but it never lost its core, the desire to explore the depths of the human condition. This is why his work still speaks to us today. We may no longer live in the world Picasso knew, but the emotions and experiences he captured are timeless. His paintings, sculptures, and drawings continue to inspire because they remind us of what it means to be human, fragile, powerful, joyful, and full of contradictions. Picasso's legacy also lives on in the ways his work continues to be studied, interpreted, and reinterpreted. Scholars, artists, and admirers return to his works again and again, finding new meanings, new layers, new insights. His art is like an endless puzzle, with each generation discovering something different, something that speaks to their own time and place. This ability to remain relevant, to continue sparking conversation and thought, is the mark of a truly timeless artist. And so, as we stand in front of a Picasso painting, whether it's the shattered forms of Guernica, the playful lines of Le Rêve, or the haunting gaze of the weeping woman, we are not just looking at a piece of history. We are stepping into a conversation that spans centuries, one that Picasso started with the world and that continues to this day. His art lives beyond time because it lives within us, in the way we see the world, the way we feel, and the way we create. Picasso's legacy is not simply a collection of masterpieces hung in museums, it is the way he changed the world, not just through his art, but through his fearless pursuit of creativity. He reminds us that to live fully, we must embrace change, take risks, and never stop exploring. His art is a testament to the power of transformation, of seeing the world not as a fixed, unchangeable reality, but as something fluid, something we can shape, something we can reimagine. As long as there are dreamers, rebels, and creators in the world, Picasso's art will continue to live, whispering to each new generation that the only limits are the ones we impose on ourselves. As Picasso's long and illustrious life drew to a close, the whispers of his journey seemed to settle, but only momentarily. Even in his later years, with a lifetime of artistic innovation and revolution behind him, Picasso never stopped creating, never stopped dreaming. He once said, "It takes a long time to become young," and in those final decades, he embraced this philosophy fully. His work grew more playful, more abstract, and yet it carried with it all the wisdom of a man who had lived 1,000 lives through his art. And as his final years passed, the whispers of his legacy were already spreading far and wide, preparing to inspire the dreamers of tomorrow. Picasso never slowed down. Even as age crept upon him, his hands, still full of energy and creativity, reached for new forms, new colors, new ideas. He continued to explore and push boundaries, painting, sculpting, and experimenting with ceramics until his final days. His later works, often more expressive and loose, were filled with the vibrant energy of a man who knew time was slipping away, yet still had so much to say. The lines grew bolder, the forms more simplified, but the essence of Picasso's spirit, his insatiable curiosity, his refusal to be confined, remained as strong as ever. In these last years, Picasso's art was a reflection not just of his genius, but of his joy. His works brimmed with the exuberance of a man who had spent his entire life pursuing his passion, unafraid to defy convention, to take risks, and to reinvent himself over and over again. His playful explorations of mythological figures, animals, and simple domestic scenes were infused with a sense of wonder, as if he were still that young boy gazing at the world with wide, curious eyes. Through these works, Picasso whispered to the world a final message, that art, like life, should never be taken for granted. It is something to be explored, celebrated, and most of all, enjoyed. But Picasso's legacy was not simply in the joy he found in his later work. His greatest contribution to the world was the way he empowered future generations to dream, to imagine, and to break free from the constraints of the past. Picasso's entire life was a testament to the belief that art has no limits, no boundaries. He showed us that creativity is an act of courage, a willingness to step into the unknown, to challenge what has come before, and to forge a new path. This was his gift to the dreamers, the artists, and the creators who followed in his footsteps. Picasso never adhered to the expectations of the world, and that, perhaps, is his most enduring lesson. He whispered to every artist who came after him that the only true failure in life is to stop dreaming, to stop creating. Through his constant reinvention, Picasso showed us that art is not a destination but a journey that is as much about discovery as it is about creation. His works, from his earliest sketches to his most abstract final pieces, remind us that there is always something new to explore, always a new way to see the world. And it was not just the artists who felt Picasso's influence. His life and work have inspired dreamers from every walk of life, writers, musicians, philosophers, scientists, and anyone who has ever dared to think differently. Picasso's art speaks to the rebel in all of us, to that part of the human soul that longs to break free from the confines of tradition and expectation. He reminds us that life itself is an act of creation, that every choice we make, every path we follow, is a work of art in its own right. His painting Le Rêve, The Dream, is perhaps one of the most fitting symbols of Picasso's final message to the world. In this intimate portrait of his lover, Marie-Therese Walter, the lines are soft, the colors dreamy, as if the figure is floating in a world that exists somewhere between reality and imagination. The painting captures the essence of what it means to dream, to be suspended in a moment of pure creative possibility. And that is what Picasso offered to the world, the permission to dream, to imagine a world that is not bound by the limitations of the present but is instead shaped by the endless possibilities of the future. When Picasso passed away in 1973, the world lost one of its greatest artists, but his legacy had only just begun. His art continues to live on, not just in museums and galleries, but in the hearts and minds of all those who have been touched by his fearless creativity. His influence can be seen in every brushstroke of an artist who dares to take a risk, in every melody of a musician who bends the rules, in every word of a writer who defies convention. Picasso's spirit, his final whisper, lingers in the air, encouraging us all to dream a little bigger, to reach a little farther, and to never stop creating. His works continue to inspire because they are not just beautiful, they are alive with the energy of a man who never stopped exploring. Whether through the stark drama of Guernica, the playful simplicity of his late ceramics, or the fragmented brilliance of his Cubist portraits, Picasso's art is a reminder that creativity is a living, breathing force. It is not something that belongs to the past, but something that pulses through the present, shaping the future in ways we cannot yet imagine. Picasso's final whisper, then, is one of hope, of possibility. It is a reminder that we are all capable of extraordinary things if we dare to dream. His art, his life, was a testament to the idea that the act of creation is itself an act of defiance, defiance against fear, against doubt, against the limitations that the world tries to impose upon us. In every brushstroke, Picasso whispered to us that art is not just something we do, it is something we are. And so, as the world continues to change, as new generations of artists and dreamers emerge, Picasso's legacy remains a guiding light. His final whisper, carried on the wind, reminds us that the world is ours to shape, that the only limits are the ones we set for ourselves, and that the act of dreaming is the most powerful act of all. And so, dear listener, as we gently close this chapter on the remarkable life of Pablo Picasso, I invite you to linger just a little longer in the echoes of his creativity. Picasso, who saw the world not in the rigid lines of tradition but in the fluid, ever-shifting colors of possibility, has left us with a legacy that stretches far beyond his time. He reminds us, again and again, that life itself is an act of creation, one where we must be unafraid to tear down old walls and rebuild them with new ideas, new visions, and new dreams. His journey teaches us that no matter where we are or what paths we walk, the spark of creativity within us is always alive, waiting to be nurtured and unleashed. Perhaps, as you close your eyes tonight, you'll feel that same whisper of inspiration calling to you. Maybe it's a quiet reminder to look at the world with fresh eyes, to find beauty in the unexpected, or to pursue the dreams you've held close for so long. Picasso's life shows us that there are no limits, only those we set for ourselves. Whether it's art, ideas, or the simple moments of everyday life, there's always room to transform, to grow, and to see things in ways no one has before. As you drift into the gentle arms of sleep, remember that every night holds the potential for new dreams and every day offers a chance to create something entirely your own. Picasso's legacy whispers that you, too, are an artist of your life, capable of shaping the world around you in ways both small and grand. If you enjoyed this whispered journey through Picasso's world, I invite you to follow the channel for more stories of visionaries, dreamers, and moments in history that have shaped the world we live in. Together, we'll continue to explore the timeless tales that live in the whispers of the past, guiding us toward a future filled with wonder. Thank you for being part of this magical journey tonight. Sleep well, and may your dreams be as vivid and boundless as Picasso's art. Good night, and until we meet again, may creativity and inspiration be your constant companions.